I have engaged with unhealthy behaviors myself and have been on the receiving end of some pretty toxic stuff. In my early 20s, a former partner was physically violent with me. He hit me across the face, he threw my laptop, he broke an ashtray, and he would regularly yell at me for things that I did. And at the time, I thought some of this behavior was loving. Like, for example, he would scream at me if he caught me smoking cigarettes. And I forgave that because I thought it was coming from a place of care. Looking back at the situation, I wish that I had known to look out for these 10 red flags because maybe it would have saved me a lot of pain and heartbreak. Most of us think we could never end up in an abusive relationship, and even more of us think that we could never actually be an abuser. But I have some scary news for you. The truth is, falling into patterns of abuse can happen to all of us, and that's why in this video I'm breaking down the 10 red flags of abuse. I'm Caitlin V, your sex and relationship coach, and make sure that you watch all 10, because you may think that some of this behavior is normal when it's actually something you need to be looking out for. And the more of these following signs that you see in yourself or in your partner, the more important it is that you get help now. The thing about abuse is that it's actually much more complicated than someone like just hitting you or yelling at you. Abuse is anything that frequently and habitually harms your mind, body, and or spirit. And often it creeps up slowly and we're unable to identify it even when we're in it. Like a frog slowly boiling in water. By the time you notice that it's getting hot, it's already too late to stop it. Before I dive in, I have an important confession to make. Even though today I am a sex and relationship coach, I personally have been in unhealthy relationships. Despite them literally becoming my area of expertise in life, I have engaged with unhealthy behaviors myself and have been on the receiving end of some pretty toxic stuff. And no, this is not a gendered man on woman kind of thing. I was once in a relationship where I was very suspicious of my partner, and I am afraid to say that I used to snoop on him when he wasn't looking. I would search for evidence to confirm my suspicions by looking through his phone or anywhere that I thought I might be able to catch him in something. And whenever I found anything to get upset about, I would always feel vindicated. But if I'm being honest, it was a lot easier to focus on him and what I was angry about than to look inward and identify my own problematic and yes, abusive behavior. And actually those two examples are pretty indicative of some of the ways that abuse shows up as different coming from a male person and coming from a female person, but they're both toxic. And I share this to illustrate a simple point. Abusive patterns of behavior can happen to any of us, and it is our job to identify it and move away from it, no matter if we're the victims or the perpetrators. It's actually up to us to look out for ourselves. We all deserve healthy and nourishing relationships, and knowing what to look out for is crucial when it comes to avoiding a hurtful and potentially harmful situation. So let's dive into the 10 red flags of abuse. Number 1, excessive jealousy. This first red flag often flies under the radar because it's true that a small amount of jealousy is part of most relationships. It's a feeling that comes from a place of insecurity, a lack of trust, and a desire to control. And if you or your partner are regularly feeling jealous in your relationship, it's your job to manage your emotions and not take it out on your partner in unhealthy ways. Unprocessed and ignored jealousy has consequences in the relationship, and it is a slippery slope into abusive behavior. Number 2, violating your privacy. Even in the most intimate relationships, we are all entitled to set personal boundaries and have privacy. If those boundaries are violated, it makes us feel unsafe in our relationship and we lose a sense of personal autonomy. Boundaries around privacy can include checking your partner's phone or computer without permission, going through their personal belongings, and also sharing private information about your partner with other people. Again, these are most often behaviors that come from a place of insecurity and a lack of trust. And although these behaviors are often enacted with some kind of hope that they will ease suspicion, they almost always make things worse and only lead to a greater sense of distrust in your relationship. Take it from someone who knows. Number 3, constant criticism. Lots of couples bicker, but constant criticism and put-downs are not healthy and can be red flags of abuse. Even small criticisms, when consistent, can tear down a person's sense of self-esteem. The way we speak to each other is important. And if you are facing constant criticism in your relationship, address it because you deserve better. No person, and I mean no person, is so broken or unlovable that they should be put down or criticized regularly or frequently. No one. Number 4, controlling behavior. Controlling behavior of any kind is a major red flag. If you or your partner feel the need to control each other's finances, decisions around work, personal relationships, what you wear, how you look, where you go, or any other decision that is inherently personal, this behavior has got to be addressed. And by the way, this can show up in really small ways, like telling you how to do your hair, but it can also be really big ways, like telling you where you're allowed to eat, or how much you're allowed to eat, or who you're allowed to hang out with. More on that later. Number 5, physical violence. Now, this is the thing that people often think of first when it comes to abuse. And of course, it goes without saying that no one should ever lay their hands on another person in a violent way. But physical violence isn't limited to just hitting another person. It can include breaking objects, punching walls, threatening to hurt someone with physical violence are all forms of the same thing. It creates a space in your relationship that doesn't feel safe, and it makes the person on the receiving end of it all feel like they are at constant risk of being hurt. And this is one of the ways in which people force outcomes or coerce their romantic partners or other people in their life, is just the threat of violence. Number 6 is verbal violence. So the same as physical violence goes also for verbal violence. Words and how they are spoken carry weight, and the way we speak to someone has a massive effect on not only the interpersonal relationship, but on that person's self-esteem, feelings of safety, and confidence. Yelling, cursing, being verbally violent can be just as harmful to a person's well-being as physical violence, especially when boundaries are not observed, like continuing after a partner has asked you to stop. And I include this one specifically because a lot, again, along gendered lines, men are more likely to commit physical violence, which has real physical evidence, and the consequences are often very visible, like a hole in the wall or a bruise or a black eye. But women and female people are often more likely to commit verbal violence, to use words and language to tear another person down, to trash them or ruin their self-esteem or keep them in a submissive state. But unfortunately for verbal violence, the evidence isn't quite the same. Like, there's no bruises or scars or blood or holes in the wall when someone is committing verbal violence. But I ask you to consider that both of them are signs of abuse, and neither one of them is acceptable. Which brings me to number 7, guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is an abuse tactic that tends to go unnoticed. The truth is, constantly guilting someone over their actions or behavior can erode the person's confidence and make them feel like they consistently need to do better. It essentially puts a permanent gremlin on their shoulder that's constantly telling them that they're not enough and they're not doing it right. Constantly guilting a person is coercive, which means a way of manipulating someone in order to get a specific outcome. It is a way that people control or manipulate another person's actions, and that is abusive behavior. Number 8. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a word that has blown up on the internet recently, and that's a great thing because more people got to know about it, but it does get misused a bit and thrown around a lot. So I think it's important to define it so that we don't lose sight of the actual meaning. And that's because gaslighting is a really harmful and disorienting form of abuse. There are a few different forms of gaslighting, but in a nutshell, it's when one person acts in a way that neglects or confuses the other person's reality, creating a sense of self-doubt and confusion in the victim's mind. Hang on with me for just a second. The actual term gaslighting comes from an older movie called Gaslight. Side note, this was Angela Lansbury's film debut. In the film, the husband character consistently and constantly manipulates his wife to make her think that she's losing her sanity, saying that the reason that a picture is taken off the wall is because she took it down, or saying that his watch is missing and then finding it inside of her purse and saying that she's been stealing things and she doesn't even know that she's been stealing them. And finally, he's spending time inside of her attic turning the gas light, which is just, an old light. Actually, I don't really know about gas lights, on and off, and then telling her that it's not going on and off. Obviously, you can see how if you're constantly being told by someone that you love that you're doing something that you know you're not doing, but you trust them, you eventually will feel like you are losing your mind. Like maybe you are going insane. Maybe you're not actually safe to go out into public anymore. It's a really interesting movie, and I'm so glad that it gave us this term of gaslighting because it's something that we really need in order to describe what it feels like when someone is making you doubt yourself and what you know to be true. Gaslighting can be as obvious as outright denying that something happened. Like, no, you didn't see me making out with that woman. You're making things up. Could also include calling your partner crazy for feeling a certain way. So you don't have any validity to the way that you feel. You're acting crazy. Why would you feel that way? Even though you do feel that way. It can also be really subtle, like words and actions that just don't add up, or whenever someone tells you that you're imagining things, which causes confusion around the issue. Number 9. Isolation. In healthy relationships, both partners are able to create room for each other while also maintaining the other meaningful relationships and bonds and interests in their life. However, if one or both partners is being isolated from the rest of their world, that is a classic red flag of abuse. This means either being told or guilted into not seeing your friends or family, being made to feel like you have to be with your partner at all times, or being made to give up interests and hobbies that you had before you entered the relationship. Classic example is someone saying, hey, I don't trust that friend, you can't talk to them anymore. If you want to be with me, I don't want you to keep hanging out with the girls because I don't think they have our best interests at heart. Or I don't like the way that that friend influences you, so you can't see them. Isolating a person from the rest of their lives makes them more dependent on their abuser. It also makes them more susceptible to all other forms of abuse, manipulation, and coercion. Because of that, it is often the very first red flag. If you notice this happening to you or a friend, do not take it lightly. Don't downplay it, ignore it, be like, she'll be allowed to come back and be my friend again later, or he's only insecure right now, this won't be a thing forever. Isolation is the fertile ground in which abuse grows its deepest roots. You can only gaslight someone when there's no one else in the room with them defending that they're not crazy. So isolation is very, very serious. I take it incredibly seriously when I see it in my friends, and it is a big no for me and a huge red flag. Number 10, threats of harm. Threatening physical or emotional harm can actually be as harmful as the threatened action itself. Threats create a feeling of fear and unease and are absolutely a form of abuse. But it doesn't end at just threatening your partner. Threatening self-harm or threatening to harm others is also abusive. Threats of self-harm can sometimes fly under the radar, but making someone feel like you would hurt yourself if they left you is a manipulation tactic and abusive behavior. It makes the person feel like they are responsible for your well-being, and it is a form of control. And by the way, threatening to end the relationship in order to force an outcome that you want is the definition of coercion. Like if you say to someone, if you fill in the blank, I'll break up with you, that's coercion. Or if you don't fill in the blank, say, you don't sleep with my best friend, if you don't pay for dinner for me and my friends, if you don't give me exactly what I want when I want it, I'm out. Basically, if you or your partner threatens to end the relationship as an ultimatum, instead of establishing and defending your boundaries, cut that shit out and ask yourself if this is a relationship that you really want to be in, if you really can be in safely, healthily. Now, although these are 10 major red flags for abuse in relationships, this is not an exhaustive list. Abuse comes up in many different forms and different ways. Some are more obvious than others. If you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around your partner all of the time, if you feel like you can't actually be physically or emotionally safe inside of your relationship, or you feel like you don't have autonomy because someone is controlling your life, please take a good, hard look at the situation and allow yourself to seek the help if you need. At a minimum, call someone who loves you and who you can trust and run what you're noticing by them to see if they agree with you that this behavior is problematic. Do at least that for yourself. If you find yourself in an abusive relationship, there are resources available to you. If you're in the United States, you can contact the Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And you can use that to come up with a plan for yourself to get you out of danger. Please remember, if nothing else, that you are not alone and you do not have to put up with a current situation that is abusive. You deserve better. Now, on the flip side, if you just listen to this list and you have recognized some of this behavior in yourself, even just a little bit, if you've caught yourself going, oh, I've done that before, I kind of do that right now. Remember that it is your responsibility to stop that and that you don't have to do it alone either. You can seek counseling, you can seek support. Often even subtle forms of abusive behavior can cause harm to our partners. And just because they come from a place inside of us that is hurt or insecure doesn't mean that it's okay. Now that you know better, you can do better. So seek out a professional therapist, a counselor, even a coach. Do the work to develop a healthier way of being in this relationship, not just for your partner's sake, but for your own. I did it, and I know you can too. Thanks for watching. I'm Caitlin V, sex and relationship coach, and I will see you here next time.